You're listening to Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie. I'm one of your hosts, and my name is Nate, and joining me is one of your other hosts, in fact, the only other host, and his name is Josh. And but you might know him better for his work as the Foley artist on a Goofy movie. Yes, that's right. He used his own human flesh body to make that perfect Cheese Whiz squirting noise from that one scene. Where the guy makes the Leaning Tower of Cheesa. We all remember that. That's the thing we remember from that movie. Say hi to the people, Josh.
Hello. Would you like me to try to make that noise again now for the people?
I mean, if you're willing to drop it for free here on this podcast, I think everybody would really appreciate that.
I'm feeling pretty generous. I think I might. Keep me up.
I don't know. Do I just say Leaning Tower of Cheesa?
Yes.
Leaning Tower of Cheesa.
Boo, you suck.
Nope, that was a mistake. That was definitely a mistake. I feel like embarrassed in my soul.
You know what? That's fine. I mean, you can't go home again. You can't return to the Leaning Tower of Cheesa. Sometimes you just have to push forward and record the final episode of an entire season of a podcast about Pauly Shore.
Pauly Shore! Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose smile and widen eyes and wheeze of cool command tell that its sculptor well these passions read, which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear. Danger! Do not come here. Everything is bad. There was a guy named Pauly Shore who sucks. Look on his works, ye mighty, and give up all hope. Turn back now. And so here we are. We didn't listen, and we're dead inside, on distant shores, and my co-host and I have talked an awful lot about the very awful journey of failed actor comedian Pauly Shore, and how it maybe could have gone extraordinarily way better than its currently crusty appearance.
Yes. So, this is the final episode of the season. This is the one where we are going to pitch the quote-unquote perfect Pauly Shore movie. We embarked in this season with a not inconsiderable amount of hubris. We definitely had a kind of miscolored perception of just how consistent Pauly Shore's persona was, and maybe a little too high a hopes for just how enjoyable most of the films in his filmography would be. Even the rougher moments in the previous season have not really compared to some of the lows of this season, but we're going to carry on. We're going to soldier on. We watched
7
Pauly Shore movies, and we tried our best to learn something from them, and now we're going to try our best to synthesize those lessons into a pitch for a movie. And if you've been here for the ride with us, then I'm sorry, but we're going to experience this final moment of catharsis together as we free ourselves from the tyranny of Shore.
And after we do so, be assured that Nate is no longer allowed to pick what we do for Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie, as our season focus. Because by golly, Nate, what a choice you have made. What a path you have led us on. What destruction you have wrought, good sir.
I really did make a mistake. Okay, here's the thing. I said it before, I say it again. I'd do it again. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a mistake. Yeah, this whole part of the narrative of this podcast has just been me shedding responsibilities.
Yes, I have taken the lead for our next season focus of Pitch Perfect, and we will drop that surprise little leak later and get you guys enticed and ready to go. But for now, we're going to focus on delivering what we promised, the ultimate Pauly Shore movie to titillate the mind and the senses. But before we do that, we have to go through what we learned, and we're going to list off, all the stuff that we gathered from our Pauly Shore movies, all the stuff that we're interested in, and come up with something. But if you don't want to stick around for that, you just want to get to the sweet, sweet dessert that we are preparing for you at the end of this podcast, where we pitch the perfect Pauly Shore movie and you hear it in its entirety, you can skip ahead. There will be a link in the description of this recording, whether on YouTube or on Anchor or wherever it may end up, with a timestamp, and you can click on that timestamp to skip ahead. But we encourage you to stick around. Hear how we deal with this inexhaustible mess and turn it into something beautiful.
So, the formula that we have on this podcast is we list essential elements of whatever thing we're analyzing and going to pitch later. We ran into a bit of a problem with Pauly Shore, where it was clear, rather than one consistent comedic persona across his filmography, there's two distinct epochs, which is pretty generous because one of those epochs is really just 2 movies.
Yeah, and the other epoch is the other 5 movies we watched?
Yeah, so we have 2 essentials lists, but what we noticed before we even started recording is that even combined, they're less than the essentials list for the first season, so we're going to go through both lists here on the podcast.
Right. Would you want to start off high or start off low?
I think let's go basically in chronological order, so people have sort of a idea of what happened with us, if they haven't listened to the other episodes.
Right, they might be skipping to this episode, and I don't blame them. So here we are. We start off with the essentials for what we call, and what coined by Pauly Shore himself, the Weasel era, which we have identified as encompassing the 2 movies Encino Man and Son-in-Law.
Yeah. Elements of the Weasel persona surface here and there later in his career, but for the most part it really is just at the forefront in those 2 movies.
That is correct. So starting us off, the first essential that we have identified was a general sense of style for his character, sort of a hippie surf punk.
Yeah, he's got a lot of like headbands and bell-bottom pants and bold patterns.
Dope jackets.
Yeah, with like fringe and stuff on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very, kind of iconic and notable style.
It actually plays a plot point in some of his movies.
For sure.
When I say some, I mean in Son-in-Law. The second one is Jack Sparrow-esque, where he is he's a hazy character. Everybody can tell immediately by talking to him that he's stoned. But he has these small nuggets of being wiser than you would think he would be, and is sage. He gives sage advice somehow.
Yeah, he has a little regard for authority.
Mm-hmm.
But more in a ambivalent sort of manner, rather than being an aggressive rebel.
Right. He's not fuck the police. But if there's a sign that says don't stand on the bar, he'll stand on the bar.
He will do that.
And then he'll get everybody else in the bar to stand on the bar, and they'll eventually take that sign down, and there'll be a sign that says stand on the bar with us.
This is true.
The fourth thing on our list is that he is self-aware. This character is aware of where he is in life, of, what he has going for him, and feels confident enough to keep moving forward.
Yes. He's also a chill dude. And that's pretty self-explanatory. You know a dude? Imagine a chill one. We also laid out some rules for being a chill dude, and also a kind soul, which is a later essential, that include not doing murders. But I'm not sure we have to explain that.
I mean, you kind of just did.
Yeah, well, there it is. But there are other things. Just because someone's not a murderer doesn't automatically make them a chill dude, but if you are a murderer, you're definitely not a chill dude.
Or a kind soul. So that covers that essential. Low status, pretty self-explanatory. He, could be an outsider, could be just, someone that people don't really involve in anything.
Yeah, kind of goes along with self-aware. He's aware of this status, and he rolls with it.
He sure does.
Because he's upbeat, which is another one of our essentials.
Yep. And then, after that, he has an infectious charm and personality.
I was going to say, which we mean literally.
Yeah, literally. He has mannerisms that catch on. Before you know it, after hanging out with him for 2 hours, you're speaking exactly like him and using every single one of his crusty symbolic words.
Which we have, in our last essential point for the weasel, deemed as weaselisms. A specific kind of slang and idiosyncratic speech patterns that he has. Also, idiosyncratic was the word I was looking for when I was trying to describe his style. And I said iconic, which is not what I meant. But, he calls people buddy. He mentions nugs a lot. He talks about grindage. He describes things and people and concepts as being crusty.
He's mingling. Like, it's kind of like catchphrases, but they're nonsense.
Yeah, they're like catchphrases, but they mostly take the form of just specific words he uses a lot and says in a specific tone of voice.
Yeah. And that is it for the essentials of the weasel.
Yeah, so we were building this list for like 2 movies. And then we hit... Well, I guess Jury Duty is kind of a middle point. But it really is the first of this second era of Pauly Shore.
In the Army Now is the first of the second era.
In the Army Now is so bad, I keep putting it after Jury Duty because I feel like it should get worse over time rather than get really bad and then get slightly better.
No, it's surprisingly, it goes deep, goes up a little bit, and then it just goes back down.
Yeah, okay, so actually there's a hard break. We watched these 2 movies. It's especially dramatic because Son-in-Law, the movie before In the Army Now, is entirely about... Like, the movie hinges on him being likable, right?
Yeah, it hinges on him being, specifically, the weasel.
Yeah. But, like, that's where we're getting, like, the infectious charm and personality thing, mostly. It's very big in Son-in-Law, and it was, like, a thing that was kind of appealing about that movie. And then, immediately, the next film, In the Army Now, is a total 180 from that, and his character is completely unlikable and an asshole.
Yes.
That continues through basically his whole filmography, at least what we watched from that point on, going all the way to 2020 in the film Guest House. And so at a certain point, we realized that these 2 styles of movie were so different that we had to make a second essentials list. And we've called this the grungy asshole essentials list.
Yes. And as you're listening to it, you'll think, boy golly, they fucking hate this character. And you're not wrong.
Yeah, this character is, he's no good. I think the best illustration of that is to just go through what we figured out to be the essentials of this character.
For sure, and to get us started, for the grungy asshole essentials, we have the get by quick scheme. He is always on the hunt for something to help him live his life with minimal effort.
Yeah, be that joining the Army Reserves, trying to have perpetual jury duty, being in a biodome, being in a guest house.
Being dead.
This is also true, yes. All of these, they're not plots to, like, advance his station for the most part. I guess one could argue being dead is that. But they're all just sort of plots to not have to work, not have to worry.
To advance his station. Sorry.
Okay.
You said station, and we talked about people being dead. I had to.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the get by quick scheme. This version of his persona also has a little regard for authority, but most importantly and unlikably about him, he's willing to work with authority and take advantage of institutions.
Yes, this is exceptionally wild. We didn't think, when we first came up with this idea, it was like something that we didn't think would last, would stick. And lo and behold, it did. It absolutely did. In Jury Duty, he's willing to work with the judge. In Biodome, he's willing to work with the scientists. In Guest House, he has his whole cop relationship. Actually, I skipped Pauly Shore's Dead because I don't actually remember what he did in Pauly Shore's Dead. What did he do in Pauly Shore's Dead?
Well, Pauly Shore's Dead, it doesn't totally have that. I don't know. He just goes to prison, but that's... I feel like the fact that it's only one that's missing this very specific character choice still highlights that this is a weirdly consistent thing in these later movies.
For sure. And then the specific essential that will tell everyone how we feel. Pauly Shore is a selfish, dumb, chaotic asshole, slave to his own whims.
Yeah, I think that's like pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. All of these characters are like that. They make terrible decisions that hurt the people around them. These decisions are often hard to understand and are pretty much generally selfish. And then while this kind of goes along with slave to his own whims.
Slave to his own limbs? I mean, technically, I guess he is. Aren't we all?
Well, it's technically, like, it does kind of go along with that. It's such a notable thing that we had to make a separate entry for unbelievably horny.
Yeah, our frickin' dude will see a picture of a girl that's drawn like a fucking stick figure with titties and get a hard on.
I think the biggest examples of this are when he has, like, he goes into a boner trance looking at...
Boner trance. Hi, I'm Boner Trance.
And I'm Trance Boner. We're not brothers.
No relation.
He goes into, like, a boner trance looking at a carving of, like, Lady Justice in jury duty. And Pauly Shore is Dead contains, like, 3 different scenes where he jerks off. And I think we see his boner twice in Guest House, at least once.
Yeah, we have a whole extended boner scene in Guest House.
So yeah.
Also, Biodome speaks for itself in the unbelievably horny section, where they go out of their way to be very rapey with the women scientists.
Yeah, that's one of the worst parts of Biodome, which is already not a very good movie. Yeah.
And then speaking of all this, unlike the Weasel, the grungy asshole is completely unself-aware. He has no idea that he's an asshole. He has no idea that he is scum of the earth.
Yeah, he does not realize the negative repercussions of his actions. And even when lip service is paid to making him recognize that, like in Pauly Shore is Dead, it really doesn't go far enough.
No, it really doesn't.
And another, like, illustration of that is our next essential, which is that this character generally, I think maybe exclusively, again, the closest is Pauly Shore is Dead, because that's, despite being the worst of the bunch, is probably the most well-structured. He doesn't learn a lesson, but he does get rewarded anyway.
Yes. Even in Pauly Shore is Dead, there's a whole montage of him reciting Shakespeare, the word.
Shakespeare.
To himself, and then becoming, in his own words, an actor, and he did it. Even though he's still in jail and nothing has changed.
Yes, and I have some thoughts that we'll get into about this doesn't learn a lesson thing. Because I know what you're thinking, which is the same thing I'm thinking, which is, doesn't this make it, like, impossible to tell a story? You would think that, but I might have a way around it.
And we're excited for that. And then finally, our last essential on the grungy asshole list is, again, something that kind of fits into the other categories, but we had to specifically put it out on its own because it is so pervasive. The grungy asshole is extraordinarily whiny.
Yeah, that's like the main thing that he does in a lot of these movies is just kind of whine. A lot.
But is there a part for me?
Yeah, I mean, I believe I called that movie a feature-length whine, and I stand by that. That's Pauly Shore is Dead.
Yeah, also, he doesn't mean feature-length wine like the drink. He means feature-length wine like what I just did.
Not like my brand of movie-themed wines.
This podcast is sponsored by Feature-Length Wine. Enjoy briskly with your favorite movie.
So those are our essentials. We have 2 different lists for 2 different eras. One is, like, honestly consists largely of aesthetic points about a character persona that doesn't last. And the other seems like a pretty vicious dismantling of a dude's body of work.
Yes. Now, I couldn't sleep last night because I had extra essentials crisis, and...
Mm-hmm. And I couldn't sleep last night because I had diarrhea.
We're not going to talk about that. So we're going to talk about my thing. Because we have to establish on this podcast, like, we already had, like, this setup with Ernest, the character played by Jim Varney, because that was a character that he played. Like, we weren't analyzing Jim Varney as an actor. We were analyzing a character that he played, right? So with Pauly Shore, we're analyzing him as an actor. And a big thing with him is that he feels that he's been pigeonholed as the Weasel, as especially clarified in Pauly Shore is Dead. Now, what we're doing might sound like we're also kind of pigeonholing him.
I totally understand that. I think the thing is, we're just responding to what he did. We can pay respect to not pigeonholing him by not pitching a Weasel movie, but, like, also, who cares? But also, like...
No, this is important. Don't do that.
No, I just mean, like, why do we care about Pauly Shore's feelings? He made Pauly Shore is dead.
Sure, fine. But the reason I'm saying this is because, like, we as people who want to pitch movies and, you know, have respect for, like, the way we do things, I feel like it's important that even if somebody that we don't respect anymore, we shouldn't be doing it. Like,
yes. Okay.
You know, like, we should set a precedent for how we do this. And I feel like onto something here. We've been learning things, but I just don't want to, like, set up, like, hey, we're just doing something that, you know, generally actors on the whole don't like.
Okay, I totally get that. Here's my thought process on this. We're responding to what's there. We watched these movies and analyzed them and identified, like, connective tissue that kept popping up again and again. Our thesis is that there's something about this dude that carries through all of his movies, and we're trying to synthesize that into the perfect one of these. I understand not wanting to be pigeonholed, but there's something about the fact that he keeps making these decisions to take these roles over and over again that is, like, undeniable. And I think there are other actors who we just couldn't do for this podcast because their roles would be too different. If we tried to do, like, a Michael Fassbender season, we would struggle to develop an essentials list because the roles would be too different from each other. But the fact that Pauly Shore could have just left and did indie movies if he didn't want to keep doing this. But he kept doing this, and he went back to doing it in 2020.
He even did it in his own written and directed film.
Yeah.
I also want to point out there is a movie that we didn't watch, because even we wouldn't go this slow. In Pauly Shore's filmography called Opposite Day, which came out in 2009 and was a very poorly reviewed children's comedy where the children wished that they could be adults and the adults would be kids, and it worked. And the dad is played by Pauly Shore, but he just acts like a kid throughout this entire movie, and he's also mostly a side character.
Huh.
So even when, like, he's in a role that, like, he could be, like, in this position of maybe not being this grungy asshole, he just plays a kid and just, like, dances around.
Okay.
It's, like, hard to take that kind of person seriously.
Yeah. I think the problem here is not that we're going to pigeonhole anybody. I think the problem is just I want to lay out what this podcast is actually about. It is possibly misleading when we say perfect Pauly Shore movie, because that could be interpreted in a way that I think is not what we mean. We're not saying we're going to pitch the perfect movie for Pauly Shore to star in. We're saying a Pauly Shore movie is a thing. There are attributes of a movie that makes it a Pauly Shore movie, and we're going to pick the perfect version of that. We're taking his persona and his consistent choices and crafting it into a genre, and then pitching the perfect movie in that genre. Pauly Shore doesn't even need to star in the movie that we pitch, because it's not about him, the person, the actor, and his physical body and career. It is about the kind of movie that he made consistently enough that we were able to develop a list of essentials to work off of.
And that's correct. So I just wanted to make sure that we establish that. We will do later seasons on different actors and actresses, and it may turn out completely different from this, and who knows. I don't think we're ever going to do a Michael Fassbender season, but maybe we'll do someone along those lines. We'll see what happens. But for Pauly Shore, he put us in this position, and that's what's going to happen.
Okay. So do you want to talk about, so we can give ourselves some bounds to work between as we pitch, do you want to talk about our season high and low points?
Yes. Let's start high. So for the Weasel, our season high point, unsurprisingly, is wheezing the juice. And I say that with all emotion drained from me, because Pauly Shore has done that to me in Pauly Shore is Dead, where he had a character just rip me from my bones and call me out on mimicking him. And so I can't do that anymore. Thanks, Pauly Shore. But yeah, wheezing the juice is our high point. Nate, take it away.
Oh, so Wheeze the Juice, this is a bit from Encino Man, which is a movie that's very important to me that I love very much, in which Pauly Shore puts his head under a Slurpee machine and shoots Slurpee directly into his mouth, and he calls it Wheezing the Juice. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's pure, it speaks to the human condition. That's why it's our high point.
Yep. And then the grungy asshole high point is Pauly Shore's character in Jury Duty having a dog sidekick called Peanut, and Peanut being supernaturally invested in Jeopardy, and that being an entire plot point for the movie, causing tension, and at the end being rewarded with a still photo shot of the dog, Peanut, winning Jeopardy.
Yeah, it's probably the most, notable and, complete and well-constructed joke in the grungy asshole era. It runs through the whole movie. It has a satisfying payoff. It involves a dog. It's got a lot going for it that a lot of things in that same group of movies don't. So that's why we give the Pitchy to Peanut. The one and only recipient of blanking on the word I wanted to use. The Pitchy Award. Esteemed. That's the word I want. The one and only recipient of the esteemed Pitchy Award is Peanut, the fictional dog from Jury Duty.
Yes, once again, Nate has established his vulnerability for fictional dogs.
That's true. Not real ones, though. They can say that. Fuck away from me.
You are a complex character, sir.
I know. Let's talk about low points, though. You want to tell me the low point for the Weasel?
Once again, emphasis. Season low point for the Weasel is plot-relevant drugging, slut-shaming, and gaslighting as seen in the movie Son-in-Law.
Yeah, again, this is just basically... in order to facilitate a climax of the movie Son-in-Law, they kind of ramped up the stakes in a way that was a little too grim and dark for such a lighthearted movie.
Yes. And it pretty much speaks for itself. Now, let's talk about the season low point for the grungy asshole era. Alright, maybe I'll say it first, and then I'll get into a little bit of a rant. The season low point for the grungy asshole era is Pauly Shore in Pauly Shore is Dead, a film that he both wrote and directed.
And stars
in. As himself. Giving himself permission to say the N-word from paid actors, and then chanting it together with them for an extended 5-minute scene of a movie. That is plot relevant.
Yeah, it's a whole little sequence in the movie. This dude paid some black men that he was the boss of during this time to tell the character that is him that it is cool for him to say the N-word, and then he did it a bunch.
Both abbreviated and dragged out.
This doesn't excuse it, but it is wild to think about this when people are rightfully going after somebody like Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese for having white characters use the N-word a bunch in their movies. Because, at least they didn't do this.
Yeah, so this is by far worse than any Quentin Tarantino or historical drama, like Gangs of New York thing, where they just say it, and then they might, range for that excuse of, they would say it, or that character's an asshole. But, we're supposed to, Pauly Shore is the protagonist of Pauly Shore is Dead.
Yeah.
And he just says it.
Every element, when you think about them together, each one makes it worse. You're like, okay, it happens in the movie. There's a scene where a white character is told he's cool, and then he says the N-word. That's pretty bad. And then you're like, the guy who says it wrote it. The guy who says it directed it. The guy who says it is playing himself. Ugh.
The guy who says it hired these people to be this and do this.
And it's it's an indie movie. He's in charge of the whole thing. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's the worst. It's probably the worst thing we've seen on this podcast yet. I mean...
And we've seen a lot of worse things. Look, Nate and I came together, and we were like, let's go back in time and watch 90s comedies and talk about how we can maybe bring that forward. And we thought that'd be fine. And we didn't think that we'd have to deal with as much racism, sexism, homophobia, and just blatant disgusting examples, such as a character for kids being in brownface,
Yeah.
or a character who's known to entertain kids, and even in the movie that we are talking about, has a kid cry over him being dead, doing an extended N-word scene.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, this podcast has accomplished is basically completely obliterated my nostalgia for, like, 90s comedy and 90s comedy actors.
Like, you can't go back. You can never go back. I understand. I understand that things were different back then. But I feel like even back then, the things that we're talking about shouldn't have been acceptable.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, Pauly Shore says this for, like, 2004, which makes it worse. Well, we don't need to keep litigating this. I think everybody gets that.
I know.
It's bad.
I want to cry because that's what we had to deal with for just wanting to watch Pauly Shore and Ernest movies. My God, what a dystopian world we live in. So now that we've gone over all of that, this is the point where we would have to figure out what our starting point is for this movie that we're going to pitch for our perfect Pauly Shore movie. This is maybe the point where I would sit back and recount all the joke pitch ideas that we've had to maybe give us somewhere to start. Instead, however, I'm going to start this with a memorial. This is to all the lost souls and pitches that could have been in our naivety, but will never be. They include the Weasel Zone. Earth Girls are Wheezy. Wheezepocalypse. Polly Sampson. Enter the Weaselverse. The Weasel Gene. And Geopuppy.
That might be Jet Puppy.
And these are the ideas that are gone too soon and will never live to see the light of day because we didn't realize that Pauly Shore was going to be a grungy asshole forever. So, that's bad.
Yes. Okay. I want to get into trying to actually pitch this movie because we have to do this. We can't keep wallowing.
Cool. Help me out. I don't know where to start.
Okay, that's fine. I'm here to guide you. If there's anything that I can actually do for this podcast besides, like, pitching, because I clearly can't pick season topics or edit or make a coherent point, but what I can do is guide us through coming up with this story. That's what I bring to the table here.
Yes, thank you, the Bobby Lee of this podcast.
It's true. So let me show you my butt and then talk about character arcs. Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about this. This episode has been hanging over my head like the sword of Damocles, basically since we came up with the second Essentials list. It seemed very clear and clean to me how things would work when I thought it was mostly going to be the Weasel. It would be very much like their Ernest one, where we'd come up with a funny scenario to put a funny character in, and then just construct a plot around that. But once the grungy asshole list happened, it was clear to me that it was going to be a little bit more complicated. And then the thing that really put the fear of God into me, that really ramped up a nice little foamy layer of anxiety on top of my brain, was this doesn't learn a lesson but gets rewarded anyway thing on the Essentials. Now, I am very committed to the bit of this podcast in some ways and not in other ways. But one of the things that I'm committed to is the fact that essentials means essentials. We need to, if we deem something as being essential, it needs to be in the movie. The other thing, though, as evidenced multiple times through multiple rants I've gone on in this season, is that I also care a lot about story structure and character arcs, thoughtful writing. This is another word like perfect, where you have to understand that it doesn't mean good. It just means that thought was put into it. And this thing, these two things feel completely incompatible, I think, on a surface level. The being able to tell a worthwhile, satisfying, coherently structured story while also having a character that doesn't learn a lesson but is rewarded anyway. It seems impossible. But I think I maybe have a way forward. And so I want to talk for a little bit about character arcs. Obviously, everybody knows what a character arc is. Character goes through a journey over the course of a movie. I'm going to give a shout out to K.M. Weiland's book, Creating Character Arcs, which I read a little while ago. It's a pretty good book about writing. I would recommend it and her other books about writing. She has like a whole series. But in that, she kind of breaks character arcs down into 3 types. You have your positive change arc, your negative change arc, and a flat arc. But I think you can also further break it down, and rather than having 3 distinct types of character arcs, I like to think of it in that there are 2 types of character arcs, and they each have 2 different polarities they can take. So you have your change arc and your flat arc, and there are positive and negative versions of each. So a positive change arc is probably like the most common, or at least the most like... It's kind of what you think of when you think of a character arc. The character changes and grows for the better. They believe a lie that they learn the truth about. They accomplish something. They don't think that they can accomplish a thing. They accomplish it. They learn a lesson. That's a positive change arc. You can think of a million billion stories.
I know about this. I know exactly what you're talking about. There's like the 2 different things where it's like either your character goes out in the world and learns that the world is different than what they thought it is, and it changes the character, and the character has an arc, or the opposite, the world has an arc to your character.
Yes.
A good example of that is Paddington, where the Paddington character is this sweetheart that goes out through life, and everybody they meet is a better person for meeting him because they go through their own arc because Paddington shows them how to be.
Yes, exactly. So that's an example of a flat character arc. So like a negative change arc is like a tragedy. That's like a character changes for the worse. They make a mistake. They believe a lie that they're destroyed by. Almost every tragedy, Breaking Bad, those are all negative change arcs. The flat character arc, Paddington is a really good example of this. There are very often people, I think, kind of make the mistake of just landing a flat character as being a negative thing. When, in fact, as evidenced by Paddington and other stories, a lot of really beloved characters are flat characters. Flat character doesn't change, for the most part. Goku, Tintin, almost every superhero, these are all flat characters. Flat characters work really well for, like, long-running serialized stories, so you don't have them just learning the same lesson over and over again.
Yeah, like another examples of that are, like, inspectors, like
Yes.
Sherlock or Hercules Poirot. Like, through, like, someone who's investigating a case, they're the ones that are telling the story, but it's still a flat arc in that they're just walking away from it, wherein the other characters are the ones having an arc of either confessing to a murder or dealing with someone that's died.
Yes, exactly. So if we think about a positive and negative change arc as being a character believes a lie that they learn the truth about, or a character believes a lie that destroys them, we can think about a flat character arc being the flat character has a truth that they bring to a lie-burdened world. And almost every example we've outlined here is a positive flat character arc. Much more rare, probably the rarest kind of character arc, is a negative flat character arc. You almost only see that in villains. Because what a negative flat character arc is, a character who doesn't change makes the world a worse place. That is rare because it is a huge bummer. But there is at least one example of a negative flat character arc that isn't just a successful story, but one of the most successful movies of all time, and a particularly well-regarded one. And I think we should take some inspiration from that as we pitch our grungy asshole movie. Because what I think we need to make is Infinity Shore.
Wait. You're saying the character that we have to base Pauly Shore off of is Thanos? Thanos the Mad Titan?
Yeah. Thanos is a flat character who is the protagonist of Infinity War, functionally at least, who goes through a negative flat character arc. He believes a thing that he is never disabused of throughout the course of that movie, and through his actions, he makes the world a worse place.
Right.
That's how you tell a story about a bad character who doesn't learn a lesson, but still goes through a character arc that tells a, at least narratively, if not emotionally, satisfying story.
Sure, okay, fine. But Thanos isn't the, like, core of that story. The core of the story is, like, the Avengers, and also... Spoilers. He dies twice.
I'm just talking about Infinity War, just the first part of that story.
Okay.
And he is the core of that story. He is the character whose actions drive the plot. He is the character whose decisions drive the plot. We are following his journey to assemble the Infinity Gauntlet.
Okay, you're not talking about Endgame at all.
No. disregard Endgame, because I think the thing that this negative flat character arc, if you break stories down, you can actually find a lot of other examples of it, where it's essentially, that is the first part of the story, is a negative flat character arc, and then a positive change arc happens at the second half of it. Sometimes just to one character, like Scott Pilgrim, if you think about that story. Scott Pilgrim is a negative flat character arc, and then climaxes in a positive change arc. And so Infinity War and Endgame are essentially that. They're essentially one story where the first half is Thanos' negative flat character arc, and then the second half is Iron Man's positive change arc. But people like Infinity War. People paid to see Infinity War. It was a movie that got positive reviews and made a lot of money. So clearly people are willing to watch a negative flat character arc. Now, I think another example that we could maybe look at is The Lighthouse.
Ooh, now you're talking my language.
Mm-hmm. And I'm enjoying your lobster. The Lighthouse is a movie with two primary characters. And one of them, the one played by Willem Dafoe, experiences a negative flat character arc, which facilitates a negative change arc for the Robert Pattinson character. But I would say they're both equally the main character of that movie.
I mean, I would say the Robert Pattinson's character is more the main character of the movie.
Yes, because he's the one going through the change arc. But just as much of that movie is driven by Willem Dafoe as is driven by him.
True. Very true.
So we could look at that, too, for inspiration. I mostly built up to the Thanos thing because I wanted to say Infinity Shore.
I mean, there's the Light Shore, I guess. I don't know. Pauly House. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't really work.
No, but I definitely get what you're saying. I love The Lighthouse. It is dour and dark, but just the cinematography of that movie, where you already, like, at the beginning of that movie, feel how closed off and how, like, together they are, cramped in that one fucking room. It's amazing. Amazing. 5 out of 5.
To be clear, this kind of thing has already happened. I think if we're going to follow this path... Also, I agree with Josh. The Lighthouse is amazing. Watch The Lighthouse. If we're going to follow this path and use this as a guide, I think it's kind of similar to how when we pitched the Ernest movie, what we were kind of doing was taking kind of the formula from Ernest Goes to Camp and applying this sort of, like, weirder, more fantastical elements we liked from movies like Goes to Jail and Scared Stupid, and synthesizing that into our pitch. If we're going to look at any movie in the filmography as a guiding light, I think it has to be Biodome.
Oh, I knew it! I knew you were going to fucking say that. I knew it!
Because Biodome does kind of have that structure, it's just not very well done. Bud and Doyle are flat characters who facilitate the negative change arc of Dr. Faulkner.
Can we just do Son-in-Law instead? In Son-in-Law, he's a flat character too!
But that's what I'm saying. Most of the movies are a grungy asshole. He doesn't want to be pigeonholed as the Weasel. I think we need to pitch a grungy asshole movie, and it needs to work like this. Now, another way around this is, what if we double cast him? What if our Willem Dafoe, our Bud and Doyle, is the grungy asshole, Shore, but he also plays the other character who is the Weasel? What if we make a meta movie about latter-day Pauly Shore making his young, idealistic Weasel self worse?
Go on.
I mean, essentially, we just have a character that is like the Weasel, interact with a character who is like the grungy asshole, and have his positive, upbeat attitude and faith in humanity worn down by this grotesque vision of himself. And maybe he finally breaks through his peaceful nature and destroys the grungy asshole at the end.
Oh shit, okay, I know exactly what you're doing. You're pitching inside Llewellyn Davis, but there's two Llewellyn Davises. And one of them is, like, more positive about their future, and then learns not to be.
Yeah. It's like a Mobius Llewellyn Davis.
Alright, I'm on board. Last time, when we did this kind of film, not only did we need a subject to come up with what's happening in the movie, but also we did the basics of a 7-point plot structure. We're doing that again, right?
Yeah, I think we can use that as a guide here.
Okay. So then we need a subject. We need what is this movie about? We have the two Pauly Shores. What's going on here?
What if it's set on a space station and they are literally two clones of the same guy whose job is to run the space station like Moon, but they're interacting with each other.
Too much like Moon.
And one is slightly too much like Moon. But it's Moon, but he knows from the start. Like, they both get awakened. It's like, you're both clones. We tweaked some of the variables, so you're slightly different, so it's not just two guys talking to themselves.
No, I got it. We're ditch a spaceship.
Ditch the spaceship.
We're going to set this in the future, though, okay? So, it's like, I don't know, 2057. We have gotten so accustomed to the way things are in film and media that we just don't want change anymore. It's kind of like an Ally McBeal situation from Futurama, where we just want the same characters doing the same shit over and over and over again. That's what Hollywood wants. That's what the people want, or so we think. And we have this aging character actor, played by Pauly Shore, who gets cloned because this Pauly Shore, is dying of some disease. He has cancer or whatever. And he gets cloned because they need somebody else to take over his character role, and no one else wants to do it because they don't have that right sort of appeal. So they just clone him. They have a younger clone, and then they have the clone be around with the older Pauly Shore and learn from him.
Okay.
To get that sort of character appeal. Very meta.
Maybe they, I don't think he should be Pauly Shore. Like, I think he should be Pauly Shore playing a Pauly Shore equivalent. It should be kind of like Birdman.
Yeah, totally.
But maybe they, like, it's a clone, right? He doesn't have his memories. So maybe they feed the movies into the mind of the clone. So the clone's actual personality is the fake persona that the older character actor had been putting on. So he, like, believes the lie.
Right, so the first step of creating this clone is not only, like, having him be brought up to, like, a certain... Like, they just clone him at, like, a certain age. Like, we're just going to skip the, birth thing. It's like Jurassic Park dinosaurs. They're adults.
Yeah.
And the way it's going to work is, like, they sit him in a room. They play all the movies. He sees the stuff, and he's like, that's who I need to be. That's who I am modeling my persona on. And the final step of that process is, like, a week with the actor that he's replacing. And in that week is what the movie is. Maybe
he's not a clone. Maybe he's a robot. And they build his AI by making it watch the movies.
Both of those work. Do you think robot would be, like, less problematic for, like, just plot structure?
What do you mean?
Like, like, instead of, like, explaining, like, oh, he's a clone that was an adult immediately and here's all the pseudoscience. Like, it'd just be like, he's a robot.
Yeah. We could also get around it being, like, bad CGI de-aging if it's, like, he's literally supposed to have, like, a hologram CGI skin.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we want to go with robot?
Yeah, I think robot is a more eloquent idea than clone.
It's funny because we're even doing the thing that they did in Pauly Shore is Dead, where we have to acknowledge that, like, the storyline is much more compelling if you assume he kept playing the weasel.
Yes, well, I mean, okay, so in Pauly Shore is Dead specifically, he refers to Biodome and Jury Duty and all the stuff that, like, we know he's not the weasel in as being the weasel. So if you keep that in mind and then watch the 2020 movie Guest House, where he's just basically being the same character, he's still being, in his own mind, the weasel.
Yeah, I think he lost track of what the weasel was, like, almost immediately.
Right, but, I mean, he has to even acknowledge he hasn't changed.
Okay. So why are they pushed... Well, if they already programmed the AI with the old movies, why does it have to interact with the old version of him?
Because otherwise it doesn't work. Nobody can relate with a character that just says catchphrases. There needs to be some element of realism to that character, and the way they've been doing it is they just have it spend a week with the actor that it's replacing.
Maybe, okay, what if they... Okay, this guy gets fed up with being pigeonholed.
Okay.
He goes off, and he just becomes reckless. He leaves to go to his, like, mansion or whatever to just live there. Trailer. He retires from making movies. And they make the robot, and they program the robot with his old movies. And they set it loose. They make a movie with the robot. And it fucking sucks. And everyone hates it.
Okay.
And there's clearly something missing. And so the studio, like, pulls up some, like, hanging, like, obligation from his old contract and sends the robot to live with him for a week in an attempt to fix the robot. But, like, the robot's already failed. It's already on the chopping block. So if it doesn't figure out what makes this guy tick and made people like his movies, it's going to get scrapped. So the robot's, like, idealistic and wants to figure him out and wants to be a good actor and doesn't want to get scrapped. And he's, like, fully Joker-fied, and he wants to destroy the robot, like, emotionally. And so he fucks with the robot, and the robot tries to persevere and understand him, but is ultimately has his spirit destroyed by interacting with the embittered character actor. Is the end goal, though, that, like, the robot also fucks off and goes on the run from the studio? Is it that the robot makes a movie and it's bad? Or is it the irony that after all of this, the completely broken robot makes a movie and it's good? What if the robot... So you know how we were like, oh, Pauly Shore wants to be Adam Sandler? And, like, he wants to have a Punch Drunk Love or whatever?
Yeah.
What if the robot, after being totally broken by him, goes back to Hollywood and then has the career that he wanted? Like, gets to be in dramatic movies?
No. We got to bring it back to Inside Llewellyn Davis, because we have the robot go. He's been through the week of hell with the actor who can't, destroy the robot. Has to destroy it emotionally because, legal shit. And the robot goes on, after being a week with him and being downtrodden and destroyed, makes a successful movie. And then we go to, like, an awards ceremony or whatever, and we go to the robot. We switch between the robot and the actor. And we see the actor watching the screen, and we see the robot, and the robot, like, accepts the award, and then there's a moment in his face where it just goes blank, emotionless. He's dead inside because he's become the actor, and the actor looks at the TV screen and says, "There it is," and walks away.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, right, like, the reason the robot isn't working, is because the robot believes it.
Right.
Because the robot doesn't realize that this is a lie. And then by being with him, he learns that it's a lie and is able to achieve the performance he's supposed to at the cost of his idealism.
Right, and this is where we factor in doesn't learn a lesson but gets rewarded anyway, because the actor is our main character, and he doesn't learn the lesson that he's, like, supposed to be more positive and maybe try to affect change instead of just fucking off. But then when he sees that the robot fails, he sees that look in his eye of, like, becoming exactly like the actor, he gets the reward of, like, I was right the whole time. Even though we as an audience know that he's wrong. And it's a Shakespearean tragedy that he has his beliefs reinforced. But he gets that feeling of, like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought would fucking happen.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Did I just move you to tears?
No, I was mostly just laughing at the fact that this is what we're pitching. It's like this horribly depressing cyberpunk Hollywood drama. That's what our perfect Pauly Shore movie is. But you know what? It's fine. I think that's... Yeah. So if we're looking at the essentials, right? His little regard for authority but willing to work with authority is that he's willing to work with the studio that exploited him in the past to try and quote-unquote fix this robot.
Right. So the studio pulls some bullshit. He's like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna go off or whatever. And, like, if you really want the character, do what everybody else is doing, create a robot. And they create a robot. But then the studio pulls him back in after the movie bombs and is like, listen, you signed the contract, here's what you have to do. And after whining and complaining, he does it. Yeah.
Well, his get-by-quick scheme is signing over his rights to make the robot.
Yes. Also, because, like, he gets money. Like we even, like, do, like, a flashback scene where, like, this up-and-coming trend is that everybody wants these characters, and if, like, you're not viable, then we might create a replacement. He's like, yeah, whatever, I'll sign the dotted line. This movie's gonna make me $5 million, right?
Well, maybe we have a scene where he's, like, with his agent, and his agent is offering him, like, we could even have his agent be offering him, like, the list of our failed pitches that we abandoned, and he's just, like, pissed off, and he doesn't want to take any of these, and then finally the agent's like, well, there's one thing. Like, they're offering a lot of money for you to sign over, like, the rights to your appearance and persona to create this AI. And he's like, I don't know about this. Like, this seems kind of weird. And he's like, he's just distracted by the fact that he's going to be able to make a bunch of money and not have to work for it. So he just does it. And then his comeuppance is that he has to deal with this robot. And then his revenge for the comeuppance is that he breaks the robot's soul.
There we go. If you're still with us, listeners, you're welcome. You're fucking welcome.
If we're looking at 7-point plot structure, then we have to start with the hook, or our starting point, which is our opposite of your resolution. So I think our actual starting point for the plot is the idealistic acting robot arrives. Well, let's name our character. I said I didn't want him to just be Pauly Shore, because I want some leeway to come up with fictional elements of his career, and also I don't want to replicate Pauly Shore as dead in any way.
I mean, this is a very meta interpretation of Pauly Shore is dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
What if his name is Davy Beach?
Well, that works. What I was going to say is, do we want to emulate Pauly Shore's ability to name himself shit like Bones McCoy or Rod Hardbone or Randy Cockfield? Do we want to do something like that?
I mean, we didn't put it as an essential, but it is like a continuous element.
It is exceptionally continuous.
From Stoney to Crawl to Randy Cockfield. So I think maybe we do have to give him a name like that. What if his name is Crunch Knucklepuck? I don't know. I was just trying to think of like okay, because it's like Randy Cockfield. Let's look at the list of his names, because like Randy Cockfield is a dick joke, but they're not all dick jokes. So we've got Encino Man. We have Stanley Stoney Brown, Crawl, Bones McCoy.
In jury duty, it's Tom Collins, right? It's just a drink.
Yeah, he's Tommy, but his name is Tom Collins. Like that's the most not really a joke of. That's like the most subtle of them, which is weird to say.
Yeah.
Stonerville, he's Rod Hardbone. We didn't watch that, but that does happen.
Bud McIntosh from Biodome, but he's also like the squirrel.
Yeah. And then Randy Cockfield, obviously, in Guest House.
Also, this I don't know if this would count at all, because it fits in with what he was voicing, but he does a voice credit for Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and his name is Johnny Blowhole, which could easily just be his name in his own movie or something.
Yeah. Most of them, though, like, okay, Stoney, Crawl, Bones, these are all just kind of like weird nicknames.
Yeah, Randy. Crunch is good. I like Crunch. Crunch is like a good nickname, but we need like...
What if he's Davy Crunch Beach? And everyone just calls him Crunch.
Why Davy Beach?
Because it's Pauly Shore.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. Davy Crunch Beach. I'm not going to fight you on this.
I'm not asking you to fight me. You can offer other...
No,
like, you haven't given me any other ideas.
We're going with this.
Okay, I'm fine. He's Davy Crunch Beach. Beloved character actor. Crunch Beach. And he hates being Crunch. That's his persona. That's his weasel, is Crunch. The character that he originally played in, like, as a supporting character in some comedy.
Okay.
Do we open with him becoming so frustrated with his career possibilities that he decides to retire and hand off the rights to his appearance and persona to the studio?
Alright, so the starting point of the movie, and this might be the hook, right? So, hold me to a definition of the hook if it doesn't sound like the hook. But the starting point of the movie, I feel like, should be the outside of a studio executive's office where we hear screaming and yelling and cursing and so forth. Then finally, Davy Crunch Beach storms out of the office, followed by his agent, who they have like a sort of like talking moment of like calm down voices of like, I can't do this anymore, I'm done, I can't be Crunch anymore, it's just too much. But also I can't leave it because I need to pay my bills. The beach house that I'm working with, not beach house, the beach house, specifically, the name is the beach house.
The beach house,
yeah.
But it's not on the beach.
Yeah.
It's like in the mountains.
The beach house has bills. It's very tough to live on a mountain, and I need to pay those bills, and I don't know how to do anything else. And then the agent pitches to him an alternative of this newfound program that will guarantee him money and royalties, but he has to sign away his persona and his image. And he just does it. He's like, yes, anything. I will do that. And then we cut to the creation of the robot.
Yeah, I think that's our hook, and then plot turn 1, which is the event that sets the story into motion, is the arrival of the robot at the beach house.
Well, plot turn 1 is also encompasses the robot and its first movie. Like, the robot, like, watching all the Crunch movies, failing.
Yes, but I'm saying literally the point that sets the plot into motion is the robot showing up there.
Is that plot turn 1, or is plot turn 1 the movie bombing, and then pinch point 1 is him complaining about the robot showing up at his house?
No, so I the way I was imagining was plot turn 1 is the robot shows up and it's like, you have to deal with this robot. And then pinch point 1 is him realizing, like, that the robot is too upbeat and deciding that, like, because pinch point 1 introduces our antagonist, and our antagonist is that the robot is nice and it makes him furious.
Right, so are we, like, framing the robot as the antagonist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though the robot's more sympathetic. It's the same thing with, like, the Avengers and Thanos, right? The Avengers are the good guys, but functionally they're the antagonists of Infinity War.
Right, and, I mean, Thanos also has, like, this thing of, you know, I'm trying to, like, make the universe better because people can live now thing, where it's, like, this quasi-benevolent thing that's not actually benevolent.
Yeah. So maybe he, like, okay, he signs off the rights, he goes to fuck off to live in the beach house and not be bothering to.
Right.
Representative from the studio shows up. This, you know, the Robots movie bombed. Maybe we should probably see some of that, like, as a montage transitioning us into that sequence.
I think, like, after, like, we have, like, the thing of him, like, saying, yes, whatever, I'm done, and assigns the contract and leaves, then we have, like, the credit sequence of this weird montage of a robot being built. We see all the, like, images of the Crunch movies, and then it cuts to, like, them starting to, like, film a Crunch movie, and then we see the montage of, like, newspapers of, like, it bombed awfully, and then we cut to the robot just, like, knocking at the door of the beach house, which is in the mountains.
That's exactly what I was imagining, too.
Okay.
Yeah, like a real, like, you know, like, mid-2000s type credit sequence with, like, a bunch of CGI.
It's very, like, Watchmen the movie-esque, where it's like, we'll play, like, a sad song over a lot of shit happening very quickly, but enough goes by that you really understand, like, almost an entire movie worth of plot in, like, 10 minutes or less.
Yeah. So then we get to, that brings us to plot turn 1, where the robot shows up at his house, and I think he immediately just wants to ignore the robot. And that's the sort of the end of plot 1, is I think he immediately wants to ignore the robot, and then the robot does something that he can't ignore, and he becomes invested in fucking with the robot. Maybe the robot, in our infectious personality way, starts spreading Crunchisms to the staff of his house. Like, to his, like, gardener and personal chef, and his, like, whoever else is around him.
Okay. Okay, you know what? Okay, yeah, so it's a robot. It doesn't need to eat or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, like, Davey can shut the door on this Crunch robot and then just leave it outside and not have anything to do with it. And then as he, like, goes on with his life and tries to forget about it, Crunch doesn't go anywhere because he's legally obligated to stay there because he's a robot. And he doesn't need to eat or anything. And then also he can walk around and talk to people that are nearby and then influence them with his Crunchisms.
Yeah. I think, like, we should need to come up with some characters that surround Davey. I am imagining the beach house as being like a mansion.
Okay.
And I think he has, like, staff that he doesn't give a shit about.
Right.
But the robot, because the robot is Crunch, starts to interact with them. I think maybe we can start with the gardener. If the robot's just, we could do, like, a cool time lapse where the robot's just standing outside of his house for, like, a couple days. Like, as the sun is rising and setting.
Yeah, because, like, we, like, see, like, Uber drivers show up with food and they just ignore the robot completely.
Yeah. And then, like, the gardener shows up and he starts, like, trimming the hedges, and the robot walks over and has, like, a pleasant conversation with him and starts to, like, you know, maybe that guy's, like, arguing when he shows up to his job. He's, like, on the phone as he's walking up, like, arguing with his, like, kid. Mm-hmm. And the robot, like, in the same way that Crawl gives the dad, like, advice in son-in-law, he starts to give this guy advice to deal with his personal problems. Like, the end of that is, like, the gardener's like, that was a great conversation, buddy. And then we see, like, Crunch toddle off to somewhere else on the grounds. And we cut forward to some more time to, like, Davy getting up from, like, a stone stupor off of the floor. And he's, like, wandering through his house. And he sees, like, his housekeeper walk by. And she says, like, good morning, buddy. Do you need some grindage?
You're looking pretty like, crusty.
Yeah, and we just see, like, his pupils contract and, like, a vein pop up in his head.
And there's that clear, like, scream from, like, in the army now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And that's our pinch point one, is he realizes that, like, the ghost of himself has arrived at his house and is infecting the people around him.
Yeah, we've lost it. It's fine. Moving on. I feel like we're pitching Gremlins, too.
Kind of.
Alright. So, Davy has a gardener. He has a housekeeper. Is that it? Just gardener and housekeeper?
We could have neighbors. Maybe he has a personal chef. Does he have a kid? Like an adult kid that, like, shows up?
Yeah. Okay, so he definitely has, like, a divorce situation. And, like, part of beginning, like, the opening with the robot just hanging around is that it's his weekend, right? So the wife shows up with a kid, and he has, like, let's say, like, a little girl that he's an awful dad with, just the worst. And at one point, she mistakes the robot for her father, and then they develop, like, a weird friendship.
Okay. Maybe that's our pinch point, too.
Is that too much?
No, I like that.
Okay, so all right, we're skipping ahead. That's skipping ahead. Pitch point 2. So let's go back to midpoint.
Yeah, we need the midpoint is important here because that's where our character moves from action to reaction, and they begin to take steps to stop the antagonist. So we need to figure out what Davy does.
Okay, so I think firstly, when he starts to realize that, like, this thing isn't going away, he 100% calls the studio and he's like, "Hey, get someone to get this off my property." And they're like, "We can't do that. You signed a contract." And then he realizes that he has to abide by this authority because there's nothing else he can do. And then he, like, starts to, like, think about how this person is basically him. And then he, like, looks in the mirror and his disheveled self, and he's like, he's basically me. And he has that realization. He, like, has that, like, plan in his head of, like, I can turn him into who I am by telling him how awful everything's going to be. And that is, like, the midpoint where he's like, okay, I'm going to bring this guy in, and we're going to start talking about the real Crunch.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That I dig that. That seems like the way to go. But, like, what does he actually do, like, to fuck up the robot? He needs to, like, what are the things that grungy asshole Pauly Shore does that are so repellent?
Listen, if you're going to be me, you got to walk like me, you got to talk like me, you got to eat like me. Like, I understand you're, like, a robot and you got different things, but you have to be me, you know? Why don't you come in here, eat this awful steak that I got off of Uber Eats, and see how it goes. And then the robot has to deal with the fact that he doesn't eat, and it might fuck up the system, and he has to eat.
Yeah, he forces the robot to eat, and it damages the robot.
I'm sorry, I just had a self-reflection of me back in time having a thing with eating, and now here it is again.
That's true.
I am a joke of my own self.
Okay, so maybe he... Let's brainstorm some stuff he could do. He could take the robot with him on a bender and then do a crime and make the robot take the rap for it.
Right, it also doesn't have to be eating, and also it could be just, like, drinking or whatever. Like, you just, like, you have to drink alcohol or some shit.
Oh, okay, maybe the robot has, like, okay. The robot's, like, based on him, and it's supposed to learn from it. Maybe it has, like, a sensor that, like, reads his brain wave patterns, and is supposed to, over time, like, model them in some way. And so he learns that. Like, he once he realizes the robot is, like, won't leave and it's infecting everybody, he has a conversation with the robot, and the robot reveals, like, oh, I'm in learning mode right now, and so I'm, like, always scanning you to try and modify my thought process to get at what's going on with you. And so he's like, oh, okay, you want to be in my brain? And he just goes on like a bender. Like he just does every drug imaginable. And like he makes the robot essentially get high with him by modeling his brain patterns. And then I think like maybe they just like they go like shoplifting or something, do a crime while the robot is high off of his brainwaves.
They definitely go to like a strip club, right?
Yeah.
Gotta work in the unbelievably horny somehow.
This is hard. This is much harder than Ernest Goes Bowling.
We have less to work with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got the midpoint, right? There's a bender. Like, the robot feeds off the brainwaves, so even though he's not consuming whatever, he gets high, he gets bloated, he deals with everything that Davy is dealing with, right?
Yeah.
So that is our midpoint. What is pitch point 2? Is that where, like, we see the relationship with the daughter, or...
Yeah. Well, hold on. I want to go rewind a little bit.
Okay.
If we do the thing where the robot's reading his brainwave patterns, we can have a really sad moment where a fan comes up to him and the robot reads his brainwaves and knows that it doesn't make him, like, happy. Like, that the robot sees him, like, interacting with fans who are, like, calling him, like, Crunch and quoting his movies to him, and sees, and, like, reads in his brain that it's, like, this is nothing to him, and it's, in fact, incredibly depressing. And then I think we can have the daughter show up, and the robot is, like, down from this, from, like, everything that happened during the bender, and being out in public with Davy. And it seems like he's pretty defeated at this point. And then when the kid shows up, he bounces back and starts interacting with the kid.
Right, because, like, that's the best way to, like, learn about the actor is to learn about, like, you know, his bloodline.
Yeah, and the robot bounces back. But Davy's been reveling in, like, I beat the robot. He's a sad wreck. He spent one night with me being me, and now he's fucking dead inside, and I'm never going to have to hear Buddy again.
It has to be more than a night. It has to be like a week. But yeah.
Yeah, it could be a week. Yeah. He spent all this time with him. He's never coming back. I beat him. I'm the perfect me. And
then as the robot is dejected and starts to, like, walk off, like, you know, you've learned everything you learned. Get out of here. And the robot starts to walk off. His ex-wife shows up and drops off the daughter for their weekend, and the daughter confuses Davy with this robot. And
yeah, and he lights back up and starts, like, interacting with the kid and having a good time, and the kid likes it. And Davy sees Crunch and the kid, and it makes him feel... I mean, we're giving him too much emotional intelligence in a weird way. But, like...
he can't be self-aware, but he still can't have emotions.
Yeah. And so he doesn't have to cotton with why, but this infuriates him. Not only is the robot not defeated, but the robot's also having a better time with his kid than he's ever had with the kid. And so then in plot turn 2, he has to do something worse than he's ever done before to completely defeat the robot.
Yeah, okay, so just to set this pitch point specifically, the robot sees the kid and they start interacting, and even though there's, like, clearly a mistaken identity situation, like, it transitions to them and the kid, like, having a good time because he goes into Crunch mode, where he's like, hey, little buddy, how you doing? And then the kid likes that, and it becomes a whole thing where the kid likes the Crunch character more than their own father. And even though, like, Davy's not self-aware of the fact that the kid doesn't like him because he fucking sucks, like, he can't stand the fact that the kid likes the Crunch character.
Maybe the kid and Crunch start doing, like, a school project together, and Davy sabotages it.
Fuck, dude. Yeah, sure.
And that, like, just seeing that the guy that he was based on is willing to do that, and the fact that there's no way to fix it, like, the deadline passes, the kid fails the project, the kid is mad at both of them. The fact that Davy was willing to do that is enough to break him.
I got it. Okay, so we have, like, the kid meet the robot, right? And then, like, that happens, and then we cut. And then it cuts to, like, later on, like, maybe a few weeks later, where, like, Davy's upset that he's forced to go to his kid's recital for whatever. Like, let's say band or what have you. And then he sees the Crunchinator in perfect Crunch form, like, conducting the band or some shit. And he gets, like, a round of applause, and the kids are, like, doing well, and, like, this, like, turns him to a rage. And before, like, the performance can finish, he, like, erupts in the audience, and it completely embarrasses his daughter.
Okay, or what if yes, I'm into that. What if the Crunchinator initiates a Weasel style scene of like everybody being into it and they're saying these catchphrases and having a good time together, and then Davey interrupts it by starting a grungy asshole scene and like inviting all of his friends to crash the recital, and Bobby Lee shows up and he sets off fireworks inside of the auditorium.
No, hold on, hard stop. Bobby Lee is not in this fucking movie. I can't.
I'm just saying the Bobby Lee equivalent shows up. And we have the, like, you know, rather than being the big positive scene that everyone is into, it's the big chaotic nightmare, you know, dick party scene. Takes over and destroys that crunch type, weasel type scene. And it ends with, like, you know, the like instructor of the band or whatever approaches Davey's daughter and is like, look, if this is what it's going to be like, I don't think you can be in the band anymore.
Oh no.
And she like blames both Davey and Crunch. And Crunch is completely destroyed.
Okay. So that's our pinch point 2. What is our plot turn to?
No, I thought so the way I was seeing it was midpoint is...
Or is pinch point Crunch and the kid, and then plot turn to is the clash of the weasel and grungy asshole?
That's what I was imagining. Midpoint is...
I confused it. Okay.
The Crunch is momentarily defeated after a week-long bender with Davey. Mm-hmm. Pinch point 2 is he bounces back and bonds with the kid, and that infuriates Davey. Plot turn 2 is Weasel versus asshole scene. Resolution is utterly destroyed Crunch returns to the studio and makes the most successful Crunch movie of all time.
Yeah, and then we have that thing where we like cut back. Like we there's obvious ramifications of the grungy asshole versus the weasel, where like clearly the daughter doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and everything's done. He loses his weekends or what have you, and he's miserable in his mansion. And he's talking to like his housekeeper, and like his housekeeper doesn't even like talk to him anymore. Like she's very downtrodden or whatever. Same with his gardener, and they're like, "Fuck this guy." And then we see him like go on the TV, like his giant like movie room, and he puts on like an award ceremony, and we see that the Crunchinator robot has just successfully won an award for Best Actor in a Comedy Franchise for his movie that he did. Like we'll have like a time skip, and then Pauly Shore. I want to bring it back to because I have that. I don't know if we specifically said that we do want to do it or not, but I do want to like bring it back to the thing I was talking about with the mirror, where we have like earlier, like you know, Davey looks in the mirror and sees his own reflection. He's like, I can make the robot become me, and then I want like this end scene to, for lack of a better word, mirror that. Where Davey looks at the TV and sees his like tired, worn out, soulless expression in the Crunchinator robot and is proven right.
Can I pitch something?
Yes.
Which is the Crunchinator robot goes back. We see like another sort of mirroring the montage before of making the movie and like the chart on the box office going up and people like applauding and high Rotten Tomatoes score, and then our final sequence is split screened of like Davey and Crunch sitting like in the same position in different places, you know, rise up slowly off of the chair, wander through the space that they're like, you know, whatever like condo that the robot is being stored in and the beach house. And they both approach a piece of paper on the counter and lift it up and look at it. And the Crunch is looking at a photo of the daughter, and a single holographic tear slides down his face. And Davey is looking at the residuals check from Crunch's movie, and he starts laughing and smiling.
Oh. Huh.
But they move in the exact same way. Like, their movements are completely mirrored, except for at the end, what is different is what they're looking at and what their reaction is. And they have complete opposite reactions. Okay,
that's a little bit different from what I was pitching. Because my pitching was that they're the same at the end. You're pitching that one is still has a bit of a soul.
Yeah, but that he's like, he can't access it anymore. Like, Davy is a monster. And Crunch, like, there was still some hope, but, like, there's no, how is he gonna get back to where he wanted to be? Like, it's not even his kid. He's a robot.
Yeah. Okay, I'm down for that. I want to push for that, the mirror connection of, like, the thing in the television where he sees in the Crunchinator that there's no hope anymore.
Yeah, well, okay, so maybe that's the last shot of the montage before the final split screen sequence. We could also just cut back and forth. We don't have to do a split screen. We could just cut back and forth.
No, I like the split screen. I think we have the montage. The montage ends. We have the short award ceremony scene, and then we have, that's maybe, if we're doing based on Infinity War, maybe we have that be the end of, like, him recognizing himself in the downtrodden Crunchinator, and then our post-credit scene is a side-by-side of the crying versus the laughing. Is that too much?
No, I mean, yeah, we could do that. I don't think it needs to be a post-credit scene, but I'm also okay with that. I mean, I think for us pitching, all we need to say is that's the end of the movie. It's up for the non-existent director that makes this movie decide where to position that.
But I do want to, like, just have it, like, layered that up way, because it does pay, like, the mirrored scene does pay homage, like, earlier on, and, like, has that reflection of that character within. It also pays, like, tribute to the flat character arc, because even, like, we are establishing towards the end of the movie there is a difference between the two. Davy is the flat character that has changed the Crunchinator.
Yes, Davy's negative flat character arc facilitates the Crunchinator's negative change arc.
Yes.
It's the same thing, like, also, like, because we're pitching, we're not directing the movie, like, we don't need to say split screen or cutting back and forth. We just need to say these two things happen and they are mirrored.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that, that's like,
that's a pretty fucking solid movie. I'm not gonna lie, that sounds great.
Very depressing.
Yeah, but we knew that it was going to be that way going in. The Lighthouse is depressing, but it's a great movie.
We also, like, I reference it in terms of, like, the character, but I also think, like, in terms of style and tone, Birdman is another good touch point for this.
For sure. Also, if you think about it, we talked earlier in this season about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and I watched that the other night to, like, do some homework for this pitch. And he goes through, like, a bit of a character arc himself, but by the end, he's still, I'm going to say it, he's a weird asshole. Like, he's a weird asshole throughout the movie. He's a jerk at the beginning of the movie, but he learns to be less of a jerk. But by the end of the movie, he's still kind of a weird asshole.
Yeah.
Because he is a little bit of an arc. But, you know, to take a character that fits that trope and have him go through an arc, but still kind of be that same similar thing at the end is kind of what we're doing with the Crunchinator, the robots.
Yeah. So our, like, top line, like, premise for this movie is, it is a dark dramedy in which in a bitter...
Dark dromedary camel.
It's a dark dromedary camel. It's got so much water in its humps. No, it's a dark dramedy in which a embittered, reclusive character actor attempts to destroy the spirit of the idealistic robot created based on his popular comedic persona.
Gorgeous.
We have incredibly powerful brains. And we're very good at coming up with ideas.
I just feel better that I contributed more to this premise than just saying, and his name is Nernest.
You're underselling yourself. But yeah, I like this. I would watch the shit out of this movie. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Was, like, another good, besides Infinity War and the Lighthouse and stuff, another good negative flat character arc movie is Deerskin.
Yes, Deerskin. Now, I don't want to get too much into that because we will talk about that movie in a future podcast, I promise you. But that movie is about a person who sucks going through the trials and tribulations of sucking. And at the end, yeah, no, if you haven't seen Deerskin, watch Deerskin, and we're going to talk about it on a later podcast, because that movie is amazing.
It's a bonkers, extremely funny movie. It is the most of real movies has sounded like a movie we would pitch on this podcast.
Yes. If you think we're crazy, go watch Deerskin and then come back and tell us how crazy we are.
Okay, so
I think let's do the nitty-gritty of naming these characters, and then you and I coalesce and come back with a full lengthed-out pitch.
Okay.
That unless there's something else that we need to do that I'm forgetting.
No, you're right. You're good.
Okay. So we have actor Davy Crunch Beach. Robot,
Yes.
we will refer to as the Crunchinator.
Yeah.
Davy has an agent that he will primarily be correlating with for whenever he has troubles with the contracts. We don't have to show any studio execs, but we have to show an agent.
Yeah, the agents also he's delivers exposition.
Yes. So what is the name of our agent?
What about Chet?
Chet?
Chris.
Chet Chris?
Agent of the Stars.
How about an actual last name like Chet Richardson?
Okay.
Okay.
Chet Richardson. That makes sense. That sounds like an agent, I guess.
Now we have to name Davy's staff. He is a gardener, which, my brain, I was like, I want that to be David Alan Grier.
I mean, that would be good.
It's kind of like Retribution.
But so the gardener is like a guy, he works for Davy. He's kind of accepted that Davy is like a kind of a shitty boss and a distant, unlikable figure. But he's also having trouble relating to his, teenage son?
Yeah, that'll also help with, the family stuff that we bring up with Davy's kid. The gardener has his own problems that, foreshadows the Crunchinator bonding with the daughter. The Crunchinator helps himself. A la son-in-law.
We can see the Crunchinator give him advice about, being open and accepting and supportive. And then we can see him put that into practice with Davy's daughter.
Yes. So let's name the gardener. How about Lionel?
Richie.
I knew you were going to do that. It's a trap. You fell into it. Lionel Withers.
Yeah, that's good.
And then Davy's like, Withers, get in here. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And then Davy also has a housekeeper. And do we want that to be a woman, or do we want to define gender defy gender norms by making it another man?
But, don't you think that Davy would be weird about having a dude housekeeper?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it has to be a woman, I guess. Because he's unbelievably horny, and she probably makes her, pays her extra to be in the French maid uniform.
Oh, God. Yeah, probably.
Hey, listen, it's the character. Not us.
No, I know, he's bad. He's supposed to be bad. Alright, about Elena? That's the first name that my brain came up with.
Elena's good. Elena...
Parks.
Yeah, good. Elena Parks. Withers and Parks.
That sounds so much like a real name that I feel like I maybe just stole someone's real name without thinking about it.
I mean, we're gonna, there might be people that are named this, and if you are named this, I apologize.
We're not implying that you're Pauly Shore's housekeeper.
But it's actually, I think that works really well, because we have Withers and Parks, right? And, him, yelling at Parks or yelling at Withers is, perfect.
Yeah.
It's these nice, small syllabled names that are easy to pronounce and just fly off the tongue. I think that's good. Okay, now we have to name his ex-wife and his daughter.
Okay. So the daughter is something Beach, I assume.
Yeah.
The ex-wife is not going to have his last name. She's his ex-wife. She didn't even take his free name to begin with.
Ex-wife is Melissa.
That's good. Do we want to name the daughter Paula?
Yes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do, 100%.
Because that's what I thought of immediately when we started talking about the daughter, and I was like, is that too dumb? But also, we used the name Nernest in our last pitch, so it's not even, it's fine.
The daughter's name is Bobby Lee.
She's played by Bobby Lee. It's really a weird kind of Clifford type choice.
No, we're not doing that. So the ex-wife is Melissa Drury, and Like, we can have, like, an extended thing where he, like, makes fun of her last name because he's an asshole. He's like, Drury, what's that? It's nothing. It could be Melissa Beach.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing for an asshole to say.
Exactly. And then the daughter, Paula.
Paula Beach.
Paula, well,
Paula
does she
Beach.
start off by calling herself Paula Beach, or does she start off by calling herself Paula Drury?
I think she should start off. Yeah, I think Paula Drury is the way to go.
By the way, I know we're pronouncing it weird, but I'm spelling it Drury.
Yeah, I also think I know you said no Bobby Lee in the movie, and I agree, but also we have no power over whether or not Bobby Lee gets cast in our movie that will never exist. But he should.
If I have any power, I will throw a Davy Beach fit if Bobby Lee shows up to our fucking movie casting.
But I do think he should have a shitty friend that shows up during the bender that he calls when he wants to destroy the French horn recital.
Yeah, a shitty go-to friend, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, let's make two shitty friends.
Yes, that's a good idea. One could be tall and one could be short.
Let's make one of them a lesbian.
Okay.
Because he hangs out with a girl to help him pick up on girls.
That's good.
Again, this does not reflect the belief of the creator. It reflects the belief of the character.
Yeah.
Are
these
dirty
comedians?
Saying it? It could be. Yeah, we could have comedians. It could be very similar to Guest House.
Yeah. No, but I mean in universe, these are other LA comedians.
Oh, for sure. Or other character actors.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of them is his lesbian best friend, and the other one is another shitty best friend. These are his guys.
Yeah, I think maybe so. The guy one should probably be named Lobby B.
What'd you say? You cut out.
I said Lobby B. It's kind of a reference to hotels and stuff because he's a comedian on the road. That's really all there is to that.
I'm gonna put my foot down on that.
All right, let's come up with some names. What about Frank Ocean? Because of beach.
What if they're just Steven and Andy?
Yeah, that's fine.
As a reference.
Yeah, I actually like that. What if there's Stephen, Dick, and Andy Baldwin? Let's go the extra step. And he has a friend that he calls who doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. Whose name is Brendan Aston.
No, we're not doing that.
Yeah, we just do Steven and Andy. We don't need to give them last names. I like that they're just Steven and Andy.
Yeah. All right. So we'll make Andy the lesbian. I hate this.
That works.
Everything about this makes me feel dirty. Yes. We'll make that Andy, and then the dude will be Steven.
Mm-hmm.
And so Steven and Andy are his guys, and it's go-to. And we'll have a lot of background friends that won't matter, but these will be the two recognizable ones.
Yeah, and they could be up to... They're going to have lots of jokes where they show up and they've been doing something terrible. One of them is running a pyramid scheme in the background of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. There is a comedic element to naming the lesbian after Andy Dick.
Yeah, I think that's good. And Andy works as my mom's name is Andrea and people call her Andy.
Yeah, exactly.
Short.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so is there any other characters in this movie that we want to have a significant enough role that we name them?
I think we're good. I can't really think of anybody else.
Okay, we should name the studio that he works for.
Sure. What about... There's Universal, Disney. What if it's Ascendant Studios?
Let's do... Okay, so there's also Animal Studios, right? Let's do a version of the Weasel Studios.
Oh, see, I was going to suggest, what if it's Encino Studios?
Encino Studios? That is a really direct tie.
Yeah.
I mean, we could also do Caveman Studios.
Yeah.
Caveman Studios works because it's dumb comedies, right?
If we want to do the Weasel thing, we could do what if it's
Stoat or something?
I was going to say, what if it's Martin Partners Pictures? And because it sounds like a name, but also Martin is a kind of weasel type animal.
I like that. Martin Partners Pictures presents Caveman Comedies and then it goes to whatever the name of these movies are, which I feel like we should come up with the names of these movies.
I don't think it's a series. I think it's just like he plays the Crunch persona in like a series of movies. So we could come up with a bunch of fake movies. It could be like, Groovy Garbage Man, Quid Pro Quo, and that's like one where he's like a lawyer. Like, I feel like they're like the movies that he did in real life. Like, it's like, okay, like they were called like Jury Duty and Son-in-Law.
Yeah.
He does a movie called In Loco Parentis, where that's about like him having a kid, and then he's shitty to his own kid.
Alright, we need specifically... So we don't need to name all of the movies in his career, right? That's just like a montage, but we need specifically the name of the first movie that the robot bombs, and the name of the movie that he succeeds in.
Oh, maybe In Loco Parentis should be the one that the robot succeeds at, because it's extra heartbreaking.
Alright, well, what is the failure? Is that Quid Pro Quo?
So they're both like legal terms?
No, they don't have to be that.
What if it's what if it's the place my brain went was just patent pending? I think it's about like he comes up with an invention, and then it's because he is an invention. He's a robot.
Ooh, I got it. What about patent pretending?
Patent pretending it's bad, but it's good.
Well, that's the point, right? This is the bomb.
Yes, I like that. Okay, so the bomb is patent pretending, and then he succeeds at making it Loco Parentis.
Yes, that's good. That's very good. Okay. Is there anything else?
No, I think we're good. I think we take a break to write up our pitch, and then we come back and read it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we should name the daughter's school, but that doesn't matter.
Who cares what the fucking school is?
Yeah, no, that does not matter.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a break for right now, and when we come back, we're going to have a full scripted movie. Well, listeners, if you got to this point, you either walked with us on the path of destruction to figure out what kind of movie we might make for the perfect pitch for a Pauly Shore movie, or you skipped ahead to here, and probably wisely so. But here it is, the perfect pitch of a Pauly Shore movie. A movie that we have titled Understudy.
Yes, it's a dark dramedy, and unlike our Ernest pitch, where we were trying to get in the pocket of what an Ernest movie was like and pitch one similar to what had come before, I would say that this movie we've come up with is quite different from anything we watched for this podcast.
Yeah, let's give them the plot line, and then we'll go back and forth in telling the exact thing of the movie. So, what's the plot line of our dark dramedy, Nate?
It is about a embittered character actor who attempts to destroy the spirit of the robot created in his likeness to replace him.
That tells you enough, doesn't it? You're in for a treat.
All right.
Here is the pitch for the movie Understudy.
Set in the near future year of 2057, Davy Beach, played by Pauly Shore, is a successful comedic character actor who has an extensive contract with Martin Partners Pictures. He has starred in a series of popular comedy films in which he has portrayed a laid-back, hippy-dippy persona known as Crunch. Years of playing the same character has caused him to grow restless and bored, and after an exhaustive argument about being pigeonholed by the studio, his agent, Chet Richardson, gets him to agree to a new, trending alternative in which he signs away his life and image rights in order to cash in on royalties and be done with it. The studio uses these rights to construct a robot in his image, based entirely on the Crunch persona, and program its AI by feeding it Crunch movies and no other sensory input.
The robot, now known as the Crunchinator, played by bad CGI young Pauly Shore, stars in a box office bomb about a wacky inventor called Patent Pretending. In response, the studio sends the Crunchinator Davy's mountainside home, the Beach House, where he is promptly ignored and left on the property for several days. Eventually, the Crunchinator is approached by Davy's groundskeeper, Lionel Withers. And in the course of their conversation, the Crunchinator gives Withers some sane, Crunch-style advice about dealing with his rebellious teenage son. Cut to a few days later, where Davies is responding to an alarm by his bedside and yelling for his housekeeper, Elena Parks, at whom he complains that she's not wearing her proper sexy French maid-style uniform. And she responds dismay with a crunchism, along the lines of, "Don't be so crusty, buddy." This causes Davy to have a full-blown panic attack, after which he has a self-realization, a moment where he's looking at a mirror and resolves to break the Crunchinator's spirit and bring it down to his level.
Davy, in frustration, confronts the Crunchinator and learns that they're using some sort of newfangled technology to analyze Davy's brain patterns and replicate them in order to learn how to more effectively portray the Crunch persona. Armed with this new knowledge, Davy and his scumbag friends, Steven and Andy, take the Crunchinator on a weeks-long bender, having the Crunchinator experience Davy being zonked out on booze and drugs and an overabundance of strip clubs. These acts of debauchery, immorality, and absurdist hijinks such as random dog shaving and inhumanly cruel pranks on innocent bystanders fry the Crunchinator's emotional and logistical sensors and leave him in ruin.
As the Crunchinator prepares to pack up and leave the beach house, he is intercepted by Davy's young and estranged daughter, Paula Drury, who recently arrived with Davy's ex-wife, Melissa Drury, for her weekend visitation. As Davy gets to a very shitty argument with Melissa, Paula briefly mistakes the Crunchinator for Davy, and the two begin to bond, which gradually improves the Crunchinator's mood. We cut to a scheduled school event in which Paula is playing a major part in a mock trial. Davy shows up against his will as a compromise to Melissa. As this is going on, Davy doesn't pay attention, texts Steven and Andy, and jokingly suggests they should come and see this absolute shit show. Suddenly, Paula calls in her surprise witness, which is the Crunchinator, which everyone loves. This infuriates Davy, and he demands Steven and Andy show up to support him. After the duo arrives, they loudly heckle the Crunchinator, but Steven and Andy take it too far and also heckle Paula. Steven also moons the stage, which is full of middle school children.
There's a loud post-show argument between all parties involved, which ends with Paula disowning both Davy and the Crunchinator and crying that she never wants to see either of them again. This fully breaks the Crunchinator, but Davy seems nonplussed. The Crunchinator leaves, and Davy resumes his pre-Crunchinator daily routine. Sometime later, as he is getting high in front of the TV, Davy is taken aback when he sees that the Crunchinator has finished a new movie, Il Loco Parentis, which is a huge success. But at the moment of triumph during an award ceremony, he sees a familiar look in the Crunchinator's eyes, a look of pure emptiness. This prompts Davy to loudly claim success and resume his routine debauchery.
We end with a mirrored sequence of Davy and the Crunchinator moving listlessly through their living spaces. Each looks at a piece of paper on their respective counters. The Crunchinator looks at a photo of himself and Paula preparing for the mock trial, and sheds a single holographic tear. Davy looks at the royalty check for Il Loco Parentis, and erupts in uproarious laughter. The movie cuts to black as the laughter hauntingly dies out.
There it is, everybody. That is our pitch for the perfect Pauly Shore movie.
That is understudy, and we have been through hell and back, but we did it. There will never be a more perfect pitch for a Pauly Shore movie than that. We hope you enjoyed it, and Pauly, because you're alive, if you're listening,
and you're adopted.
we want, and you're adopted. You're not adopted. You're not adopted. Because you might be listening, we want to extend to you that if you want to make this movie, we would love to see that. But we demand royalties.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did the work of coming up with the pitch for the movie, obviously.
Yeah, don't big fat liar us.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. We have pitched our Pauly Shore movie. We feel that we hit all the essentials of the Pauly Shore character of the grungy asshole, also hitting the essentials of the Weasel character as well. And what a trip. What an absolute trip. I can't say that I enjoyed the journey, but I really enjoyed what we ended up with, even though it's excruciatingly grim. And I hope others will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way.
Alright, well, I would normally ask Nate where we go to from here, but Nate's privileges as this person who tells us what the season is next has been revoked.
I'm in podcast jail.
He's in podcast jail for probably good. It's like that one time that you tried to make popcorn again after burning the microwave. It's like, no,
Yeah.
not again.
This season has been the burnt popcorn of Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie.
This season has been like that time that you made your family watch The Good Shepherd and then the movie night stopped.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much.
Well, next season on Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie, which we hope that you'll join us for because it's sure to be a treat. We're ripping the Band-Aid off. We're doing what we should have done the moment we named this podcast. Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie, is going to take on a new season focus of Pitch Perfect, the movie, not the podcast.
Yes, join us for this incredibly meta journey that will go on next season as we explore our dark reflection that is a series of movies about singing, I guess. Here's the thing. I've never seen any of them, and I don't really know what they're about. But what I'm excited about is they're not comedies from the 90s.
Yes, thank God they're not comedies from the 90s. Oh boy, I don't ever want to do any more comedies from the 90s. So, thanks again for joining us. We hope you'll join us for the Season 3 starter of watching Pitch Perfect, the movie, not the podcast, on Pitch Perfect, the podcast, not the movie, for Pitch Perfect 1. And we'll see you then. But in the meantime, nothing beside remains. Rounded a decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Buddy?
Bottom line is, man, just love one another, peace and stuff, alright? Word to the wind, Ace. I'm out of here.